Sorry about that. We had a power outage over here. I think we're all set now. You're muted, Judge. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. Was that on my end or
It
your
was on
end?
our end, the power blank.
Okay. All right, not a problem. Thank you. All right, we're back for the meeting. I apologize. We had technical difficulties. So if you got logged off, just log back in, and the secretary is going to bring you, if you're a panelist or a board member, we'll bring you back over on this side. At this time, I'm going to ask that we introduce ourselves. We do self-introduction. So if you'll turn your cameras on so that we can see, put a face with a name, I really would appreciate that. We'll start with Colonel Holmes, since I see him first.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Colonel David Holmes. I'm the Executive Director with the Broward County Sheriff's Office and a proud board member. Thank you.
All right, next, Judge Ribolo.
Judge Carlos Ribolo. I'm a circuit court judge. I'm in the Juvenile Delinquency Division, and I have been for about 10 years now.
All right. Ms. Machala.
Good afternoon, Gloria Moschella with the State Attorney's Office, Chief of the Juvenile Division.
Ms. Phillips.
Ella Phillips, BJJ Advisory Board.
All right. Dr. Osgood, and I see my state rep. How are you, Representative Campbell?
Senator Osgood, and I'm here with my favorite state rep, Representative Campbell.
All right. How are you, sir?
Hello, how you doing?
Thank you, both of you, for yesterday too. We really appreciate the came through for the NAACP. So
Why don't you just pull up a chair and join us for this meeting today?
We have a 3:30. We got to shift in a minute, but we want to be present.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you. Thank you so much. All right, our secretary, have you introduced?
Marsha Ellison, NACP. Ella, you had two. Why are there two Ella Phillips? Somebody about to get cut off.
Ella, you're on
muted,
mute.
Sorry, one maybe John James because he can't.
He had
get
signed
back
on the other side. He needs to.
Can you?
Tell him don't use your link, and we'll bring him over.
Okay, I don't see him back on yet.
Okay.
Yeah, he just needs to sign in under his own, and I'll take care of him.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Mr. O'Bell.
That's all right.
Michael Bell, CEO of Community-Based Connection.
All right, Mr. Walters.
That's all right.
Can you hear us, Mr. Walters? Well, he's here because I talked to him before we had the recording issue, so he's still on. So we'll get this technology set. Are there any other board members that I have not seen or recognized? All right, I'm Alona Holmes, retired circuit judge, 17th Circuit, and proud lifetime member of the NAACP, and I have the wonderful pleasure of chairing this board. All right, we have a new individual here who's going to introduce himself. I guess your interim chief probation officer. Why don't you tell us?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gregory Stallings. I'm the chief probation officer here for Juvenile Justice. So we'll be the acting CPO here in Circuit 17. Yes, it will be on an interim basis. But certainly appreciate the opportunity to get a chance to meet everyone today, and I'll be listening in as we move forward and working with you as stakeholders here with Juvenile Justice as we move forward.
All right, welcome and thank you, Mr. Starling.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
While Mr. Starling is listening in, when it comes to his part, will you be able to provide the information for us? Maybe you can call over if you don't have the population, that sort of thing yet.
Yeah. Like the number of juveniles in detention, and those are the types of demographics that we get from the Department of Corrections through probation. So do you have that information, or you just got thrown in here today?
You got time to make a call while he's listening.
No, I don't need to make a call. I can just pull it up where I'm at now.
Excellent.
We have a statewide system, so I'll be able to share with you exactly how many kids on probation.
Okay. Now, you are actually located in Broward, or you're?
I am. My home is West Palm Beach.
Okay.
But I will be in Broward at least 3 to 4 days a week or more, depending on the need.
Okay.
certainly I'm going to, branch out and get a chance to meet with all the important personnel that's part of this work that we do. So
Okay.
I will be in Broward enough to
Okay.
consider I'm in Broward.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. All right, Mr. Walters, did you get connected again? All right, I'm going to move on because we're going to lose two bodies shortly. I want to ask for a motion to accept the agenda. You should have received that by email. Is there a motion to accept the agenda today?
I make the
Madam
motion,
Chair.
we accept the agenda.
Second,
Good, and seconded by President Ellison. Thank you, Dr. Osgood and Secretary Ellison. All in favor of accepting the agenda as printed for today, signify by saying aye or raise your hand, whichever is easier.
aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Anybody abstain? Hearing nothing, the agenda has been approved for today. And I also entertain a motion to adopt the video meeting from February 8th of this board. Is there a motion?
Move approval of the video as minutes from last month's meeting, Madam Chair.
Is there a
Second.
second? Who
Second.
seconded? Mr. Obel? Oh, thank you. All right. All in favor, signify by raising your hand or indicating aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the minutes from and the video that is posted on our YouTube channel from February 8th, 2023 will serve as the minutes and the actual recording of this meeting. We are live, we're on Facebook, so everyone can see where we are and what we're doing. It is time for me to tell you about the norms, but I'd like to dispense with that. You can read those on your agenda because I really want to get to a couple things before we lose our representatives. And so what I want to do is give you the chair's report. And part of my chair's report is to ask our legislators who are here, Dr. Osgood and Representative Campbell, Senator Osgood, are there any pressing legislative bills that we should be mindful of? I just put that out there. I'm mindful of everything. So in anything that we can do, as this board is advisory. That's why it's the CAB advisory, the Circuit Advisory Board. But we do send our recommendations and advice to the Secretary of DJJ, Dr. Hall. So anything you're working on, so you just started. So as you get heated and in the middle of the session, anything that we need to be aware of. And you're on mute, Dr. Osgood. There you go.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Certainly, we should be concerned about the voucher bill to have universal vouchers where now all of the private school parents can get the vouchers to go for their kids to go to private school. And what's concerning for me, I'm a proponent of any type of education that works. But if we're going to say that it's a choice bill, then it has to truly be that. For poor parents, it's not a choice bill because the voucher does not pay full tuition, transportation, free lunch, and activity fees. All of those four things are given to a parent free in a traditional public school setting. So if we're going to really have choice, then we have to fund the vouchers to the extent that a parent can then choose. As long as we don't pay for transportation, free lunch, and activity fees, then it's not a choice for poor parents who cannot afford those means. One of the arguments is people like to use is that public tax dollars, our tax dollars shouldn't go to private schools, where parents who send their kids to private schools pay tax dollars as well. So if we just focus on consistency, private schools and charter schools don't follow the same guidelines. The principals, the teachers don't have to have the same credentials. There are just many things that are not consistent. So we must level the playing field and require all systems of education to be held to the same curriculum, the same staff credentialing, the same transparency. Charter school and public school board, private school boards don't meet in public. We are not privy to their financial documents and statements like we are when tax dollars are involved. Certainly, we're looking at any time now to see concealed carry that we're hearing is going to change to open carry. So you'll be able to get a gun now. And I'm for people that are responsible that want guns having them, but I'm not for people getting guns when they don't have to have a permit, any type of training, or any type of mental health screening. We know that that is coming at some point. Today, I'm going into sitting in a little while, and we're going to be rolling some bills. That means that they're going to just be pushed through. We have enough people on both sides to put them through. And one of that is a housing bill. And I want to take a moment to speak to that, because in the proposed housing legislation, it preempts local governments from controlling rents. And we've had a lot of people reach out to us about that. Do we really want local government controlling our asset? If you are a landlord or a homeowner, you know, from a legislative perspective, we have to balance both sides. Should the government tell you how much you can rent your property out for? You know,
Are they doing that in New York, though? It seems to be working in New York.
But when you get into those types of infringements upon people's rights, I think we first have to identify a problem. Because if we find that people are charging astronomical rates, then we can do the same thing we do with price gouging. Like when someone is selling a $2 bottle of water because there's a hurricane for $14. I'm just afraid if we start getting the Florida government into controlling people's assets, then we'll find ourselves paying a price further along the way. The bill is not a perfect bill, but when you start amending and opening bills up here, you lose things. So there's money for SHIP, for sale, to recover some of the money that's been taken away from the Sadowski Fund, incentives for developers to build, for landlords to rent their properties. You know, I know personally as a landlord, if the government told me that I could only charge, you know, $100 a month for rent, and my homeowner's insurance and my taxes, it's not, the math not going to work out. I'm just not going to I'm not going to rent my house as a part of any of those programs. So I think that bill is a good bill. I want to give some balance to what we're doing. There's other legislation to deal with this terrorist group that was declared a terrorist group at one time, and that classification went away. We're bringing that classification back. There are a lot of bills. Some of the stuff you see in the news, Rep. Campbell can speak to that because it's only on the House side. It's not on the Senate side. So I'm going to yield to Rep. Campbell.
So one of the bigger bills that we see moving forward right now is the tort reform bill, which eliminates a consumer to their right to sue insurance companies and give insurance companies all the power. And it has so many parts to it. It's like an octopus. It's like you subtract one, it's still bad. You subtract two, it's still bad bill. You know, so it's crazy how it's being pushed. It's one it puts a caps on the damages. They talk about transparent. They call it transparency in court, the section, but the transparency is not transparency because they're limiting what evidence can be brought into court for the jury to make a sound decision on what that person is owed. On top of that, they're capping the rate. So they're saying if somebody should get into an accident and it's the person who's insured's fault, and you go after them, they're now putting the person, they're now taking away the right for those to get them to target that. They're saying that the person who did the work is not at fault. They're saying that you have to get 51%. If it's 51% or more their fault, then they pay up to 51%. But if it's 48%, then the person who then the person who they feel is at fault, that's at 40%, has to pay all of that. So all 100% of the bill. And so it's crazy. It says that if they are uninsured and that person the damages that the person received is at the Medicaid rate. And if it's not even something that they can assess at the Medicaid rate, they'll say the rate of Medicaid times 140%, which is we're asking what is 140%. So this bill is just such a terrible bill, bad for consumers. It helps insurance companies to do whatever they want to do and have them run free. And I'm not even mentioning that they get to choose their own arbitration as top of that, which allows them to even have more say so as it is. And so it's crazy. If you guys are unaware, I'm sure you know the abortion bill just dropped yesterday while we were on the floor, listening to our wonderful governor make the best speeches of the year award. And so,
Rep, I know you're passionate, but we are a neutral board. And so I only get the legislative update because we have a lot of viewers on who aren't aware of what's going on in Tallahassee. But let me try to narrow it down a little bit. Anything affecting our children. I know the charter schools that affect our children. Anything else affecting, and I will say this, everything that you've talked about affects our children, because as it affects the parents, who become plaintiffs in lawsuits and things like that. The cap on housing and things, we have homeless children. So everything affects our children, but anything with a direct effect on our children, that is really concerning to this board. Anything?
Sure.
Right off the
One
board?
more thing from the Senate side, and then I have to jump to a 3:30. So yesterday in one of the committees, we dealt with the bill that now gives the governor the right to appoint the board members for the Florida Athletic Association. So they will no longer be able to choose board members for them within their jurisdiction. Now the governor is going to take control and appoint the persons to those boards, as well as allow private schools and charter schools to participate, which is not a bad thing. But we continue to see this move of boards being removed, and then the governor having the authority to appoint those board members. And I know that the NAACP is nonpartisan, we're life members, but we are elected partisans. So we don't mean to offend anyone that's watching. We're just giving the facts as, we see them as it relates to the community. I don't think it matters about your political party when it comes to children and it comes to authority. And the basic segments of government is that we have three branches. We don't want the executive branch having control over everything, especially things that we normally have citizen representation on with our different boards. And we continue to see that happen, whether it's school board members being targeted, whether it's the Disney board, now it's the Florida Athletic Association's board. So
facts never offend us. We want to know what they are, good, bad, or indifferent, Senator. And as you said, all of these things do affect our children. The homeless, last time I checked, you can correct me when you were there, I haven't seen numbers, but we had thousands of homeless or displaced children, and that number is about to go up. So certainly this affects our children, their behavior in school, which will cause them to get arrested or get into some type of disciplinary issue. So we appreciate the facts, Senator.
Right, and
All right,
there's a question. I know you gotta go, but Dr. Oscar, Senator Oscar, can you get us, or send me or Secretary Ellison the bill numbers so that we can disseminate so people can watch along as they pass from committee to committee?
Certainly.
All right.
I have a bunch of them already, Judge.
Yeah.
Okay.
And remember, the Florida Sunshine Channel is there. It's everything we do is publicized, and there's archives of videos there that you can go back and watch the committee meetings. We love you guys, but we have to run.
All right, we'll let you go this time. All right, we'll miss you. Thank you all for the update. I appreciate it. All right. Another part of the chair's report is, if you all recall, last meeting, we talked about the gender gap as well as the learning gap affecting elementary, middle school, and high school students as a result of the pandemic. And we were especially concerned about those children that are in detention, whether or not they are being taught and the gap is being, closed with regard to them. So was Dr. Wanza able to get on? Because if you remember, she said that they were going to have a meeting addressing the gap on the 21st of February. They were having a workshop. And she did report to me that she was probably going to miss today's meeting, which is a shame because I had a few other things I wanted to address with her. But she's been shifted in her duties with the school boards and with the school. So she may not get on, but if she does, then we'll get that report. But nonetheless, I'll get that report in writing and disseminate it to the board because that's important. If our children are going to get arrested and they're in jail, their detention. I know people don't like to use the word jail when it comes to juveniles, but that's where they are. We want to make sure that they at least are afforded learning and that the gap is not going to be widened just because they're in detention and being held. So my next thing was Mr. James had reported that girls. He said he had to correct Judge Williams when talking about juveniles and girls, that girls are making up a broader and greater number of offenders. And just recently, CNN released an article that talked about teen girls and suicide. And so I was going to address that. But I was kind of relying on Dr. Wanza, who was our school board or school liaison, representing the superintendent on this board. Another thing that I was very pleased to read yesterday was that both Broward and Dade have put together what is called mental health assistance. And there was a great article in an effort to, it's called Public Schools in Miami-Dade and Broward Expand Mental Health Help Services. And that's something that I've been working on to get you all a presentation on. I am near, I believe that our next meeting next month, I will have a representative from a provider here in Broward that will address this board to tell the board what services are available. However, I do need somebody from the school board to report because that's where it normally starts, where they see it. They notify, even in preschool, they can determine if something's wrong. So I'm going to need representation. Dr. Wanza is going to let me know who, if anyone, is going to replace her, or if they can adjust the schedule so that she can be on this board to answer our questions, because it's real difficult to speculate when she's there and she gets the reports of who's been Baker acted and things of that nature. And so that's real important to this board, especially in light of the fact that last year there were 5,077 Baker Acts. So I'm going to defer that, but I do want to say Mr. Gordon Weeks said he was going to be joining us, but I'm going to ask this board, those of you who pray and our attendees that pray, Mr. Weeks' father passed away, and he's been trying to be apart and things, and I didn't think he was going to make this meeting, and he said he was going to be on, but if he's not on, that's the reason why. So you all just keep him lifted up, and your good thoughts and your prayers send his way on the loss of his dad. So my report is short because I don't have the person here that I wanted to ask about those articles that I saw. But we're going to move on to the report of the Juvenile Domestic Violence Workshop Committee that was investigating. So this Mr. James becomes an integral part representing Mr. Weeks's office. Mr. James, good afternoon, and you can unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon. I think where we left off last month, there were like 30 probable cause affidavits, 38.
38.
Yeah, and you were going to read through those and find out, because we're trying to find out, are they falling through some gap or something? But you know,
So-
I praise the state attorney's office. I'm going to say it again this meeting because Ms. Mashala, she's never heard me praise them, so I'm going to say it again. They have been doing a yeoman's job with the diversion to keep these people, the young people who get arrested for domestic violence, out of the system. And we are very honored and we see Reverend Geis here. Good afternoon, sir. All right, Mr. James, take it away. The floor is yours.
So what I was able to determine, Judge, is that I couldn't get my hands on those 38 missing probable cause affidavits. But what we did was I kind of looked at present data from the month of February, right? And what I've noticed is that what happens oftentimes is that a lot of these kids get an NTA. And so what ends up happening is when they get
Can you, you know, we use a lot of acronyms.
I just got ready to say it, Judge.
Okay.
When they receive the notice of appear, they come into the Jack facility, they receive the notice to appear, and then they're released. There's not an actual probable cause affidavit that's generated from there. And then those kids are almost, I would say about 95% of the time, they're going the diversion route as well. So there's no real information. We looked through a couple of different systems that we have access to. We couldn't find any probable cause affidavits as it relates to them. And then we looked at the numbers from the month of February, right? So we kind of just been following and tracking what do our domestic violence numbers look like in Broward County. So we were missing reports for, like, I want to say four different cases. However, we were able to find reports regarding 16 domestic violence arrests. So that's 16 individual youth that were arrested for domestic violence related offenses. And just like I was reporting to you before, it was even kill. It was 8 male, 8 female. So the females are still where I don't want to use the word on track. I think that is a wrong word to use in this scenario.
But they're pacing
correct
along with the males.
Thank you for that reference. They're pacing along with the males. So they're 50-50. And then when we look at from a racial standpoint, it's half and half again. It's 50-50 with African Americans, 50-50 with our Caucasian kids. And it's still largely they are attacking their parents. So there was about 10 of those cases were directly towards the actual a mother or father. And then the other 6 were against a sibling. And in one of the cases, the young man attacked his mom and his grandfather at the same time. So we're still seeing these numbers. And I'm speaking with the school board to see, I'm speaking with a representative from the school board that's in the courtroom, who's providing valuable information on how the school is looking into these issues and what they're doing to help with some type of therapeutic services for the children as well.
Well, that article that was in the paper, and they reference my alma mater, that's Deerfield Beach High. They have what is called the Beach Club or something like that, where the students go in. It's a free zone, and they're able to get, just get away. They can sit there. They don't have to talk. If they want to talk to somebody, there are counselors there to talk to them. They also have a section where they can get clothes and toiletries. It's kind of respite, but
right. You took the words right out of my mouth, Judge. It's a respite for children to almost get a reprieve from their parents, which is interesting enough. But it just gives it, and also to deal with some of the other things that they deal with from a day-to-day, just being a student, right? Which puts other pressures on them, which cause them to act and respond in certain ways. But yes, I read that article. It spoke to that as well. Thank you for the article. It made me call my daughter to make sure she was like, hey, you're in college. Hey, everything good? Need daddy to do anything? So thank you for that information.
Yeah, but we referenced 2 schools, one in Dade. I mean, how many schools are doing that? Mr. Starling, that's your department have anything to do with that, or is that just on the schools themselves coming up with these mental health help aids?
Well, actually, there's an infrastructure that's established through the school district. We all know that it's a big issue with our young people. So our students are under a certain degree of duress that sometimes transfer over to delinquent acts and substance abuse and other mental health things. So the school district has a huge ownership because the kids are in their environments, and so they want to ensure they take care of attendance and take care of the kids when they're there. So they pretty much have on that within a certain infrastructure as far as the funding that's been made available. It's also interfaced with our sheriff's department because again, you have your threat assessments, you have other things going on that could lead to other major incidents as a direct result of the pressures that our kids are succumb to, even when we talk about bullying. So it's all somewhat interrelated that leads to juvenile justice involvement. So that's where it lies at right now. As far as where I'm at in my circuit, but I'll learn more about Broward in totality, as I continue to listen to you guys talking and just jump in to the weeds of the work.
Okay, all right. To my other independent providers here, does that sound? I read years ago where they would have these like teen clubs or something like that, where sort of after school or somewhere where they didn't want to go home because it was not the best environment, but they wanted a safe place, and there were people that provided. They would give them like snacks and stuff after school if they needed to talk to somebody. Some churches were doing it, and that's why I'm glad we have the faith-based organization represented here too. I seemed from reading that article that, as Mr. James said, children need a break from their parents, and that's why parents get in trouble, because they need a break from their children. And Ms. Evans was looking at and working with Judge Elijah Williams, on some type of respite. The children get arrested, but if they don't sit in the detention center, which we need a new one, and she was on that committee also, then they would be in the streets. So is there something that the organizations, I got community-based connections here, I got the church represented, something that you all, and the reason I'm including you all is because one aspect of this board is that we can recommend to the Department of Juvenile Justice, to the secretary, that maybe there ought to be grants for certain programs. And mental health is a big aspect of everything now. Everybody needs to go talk to somebody. Okay, so Mr. Obel, you got that light bulb look. What can you do? Can you help us?
Yeah, so I was trying to find a Dallas Cowboy sign on here, but they ain't have one, so I figured.
You know.
All right, I'm sorry. I had to throw it there now. But all jokes aside, so community-based connection, for those who don't know, we've been around in the community for over 12 years, and part of our efforts have been doing more work in the community versus after-school program. Or we do have after-school programs, but recently, up in Deerfield, we have launched a Fridays hangout for kids in Deerfield Beach, and we have kids as young as 3 there, all the way up to the age of 16. Obviously, they sub off doing different things with different team members, and that is funded by the Truth Service Council of Broward County, and this is under our mental health, our healing space program. But here's the issue, Madam Chair, is that a lot of the funders don't. Well, I shouldn't say it this way. Let me say it this way: more resources are needed for community after school program, not on campus, I mean off campus. There was a time when we had a whole lot of those, right? And if we honest, kids are not going to the Boys and Girls Club anymore like they used to, and we're just honest about it. But organizations like myself and some like Candy are creating space in different places to provide this after school, like that's in the community where kids can be themselves and have that break from their parents. I mean, I kid y'all not. Not only that we do activities with the kids, just this past Saturday, we had a whole cookout with everybody in that apartment complex. And this is Terrence apartment up in Deerfield with the Deerfield Beach Housing Authority. But it's those kind of programs that are impactful, that gets community engagement, that get law enforcement to participate. I mean, it was just a great atmosphere, and we're doing this now every Friday because, to your point, Madam Chair, this is a need. And I know we have an acting, chief of probation right now, but I welcome him to come on a Friday and join community-based connection and see what we're doing, because more of the department resources can go to work such as what we're doing, and what other organizations that I partner with are doing. And we're happy to be in a position, but we also realize we can't do this work without partners. And so having someone like yourself, Gregory Starling, at the table, but also seeing the work. Don't just sit in your chair. Not saying that you are, but we're hoping to have you here in the community to see what happens with our DJJ kids. And I'll tell you, we're doing this in the area where people say it's not safe to hang out at in Deerfield. And quite naturally, those folks feel uncomfortable coming in. BSO really don't come in as much in that area unless there's a crime happening. So we've been engaging with those leaderships over there, really getting them involved in the work we're doing. Now, I'll tell y'all this, if we don't do this, y'all, if we don't encourage DJJ to do this, we're going to continue to see more kids in our system. Because at the end of the day, there was a time where DJJ used to do a whole lot of prevention programs, right? We keep doing intervention work. We need to do more prevention work, right? That's how we solve the problem, is with prevention work. So if we're not doing more prevention work and we're focused more on intervention, there's people who capitalize on intervention, but we're not in that kind of business, right? We need to be in the business of making sure our kids can have a quality, safe environment to be kids, to enjoy life, and to be okay walking outside their home and not worrying about gun violence. And so I share all that, Madam Chair, just to really provide some perspective to encourage the incoming chair of DJJ. But I hope, sir, it's my hope that you join us on any given day. Happy to tour you in the community to show you what we up against.
All right.
Okay, Madam Chair, can I echo some additional comments as relates to
Absolutely.
the conversation? So clearly, as far as community-based connections, what you're speaking is my language, first of all. And so you are right as far as on campus activity, because again, you got the different things, and some of the legal things and things that come up with kids and boys and girls in certain environments. You set stuff up for other issues, right? But in the community where they live is where we have them. But what I refer to them here, I use my county as an example. We have what we call youth empowerment centers. The youth empowerment centers, and the environments are made up by what the kids want and what they need within their respective communities. But the cities and the counties own the financial responsibilities for kids who are from the county. And so as far as investing in our kids early on, so as far as our Board of County Commissioners, our city leaders, bringing those things to our city councils as far as how the kids in our communities, particularly youth of color in particular, and what can we do in those environments. So what we've done, we've erected facilities throughout the county based on where we have the higher population, but we have to have the buy-in from the cities in the county, but also having a provider from those communities who are willing to step up and step out, and not so much about the dollar amount, but the same token, it costs money to run programs and take care of the enrichment opportunities, and also to build facilities. Okay, if it's a city facility, we need the facility. Okay, as far as those things that's needed, whether we're talking of, the art studio, the recording studio, things that kids, the technology type things, then having personnel there that work well with our kids. So those are some things that make it really easy. And so the kids show up every day after school until 7 p.m. And we have vans, so those kids are transported home, if there are some issues with kids getting to and from the locations. The school bus dropped them off at the locations in the environment close enough to the youth empowerment centers. For those identified youth, that's going to fit the bill, and those needs exist. So now there's no child care concerns, but there are teenagers that are in those locations that would typically hit our system, but their use of leisure time is occupied in a more appropriate manner. So that's an example, but you are right. Your environments there, definitely kids need those. But as far as our cities and counties, being part of that, as far as, the dollars associated with the tax base is the route that we did take to get the traction we needed to get this done.
So, Mr. Sterling, what I would say is that, and I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I know. you
No,
probably
no,
had-
let's have this discourse.
But
And
what I
anyone
will-
else that wants to chime in, you certainly
So-
welcome to do so.
So, Mr. Sterling, what I will say, and excuse me if I become a little bit more passionate about this, but here's the thing: when we receive DJJ dollars, you all require us to put kids who are in the prevention method into the JJIS system. So you make it hard, not you personally, but your system makes it very difficult for parents want to allow us to sign up their kids at times to put them in this JJIS system. Because once we all know, once they're in their JJIS system, they're in it, right? Ain't no delete button to say, oh, you ain't never in there. Y'all can say it, but we all know it's in it because anyone who has access to that can go and pull that kid in the system. Now, if the law enforcement go and say, well, this kid is in the prevention system, and the child decided to do something else wrong, and I know John James can help me with all the legal terms for that, ramifications for that. But if that happens, now we got a kid looking at 2 strikes when really it wasn't a strike to begin with, right? So we got to be real about our policies and procedures. Now, I have had this fight with Cassandra as well when she was on this board, but I want to make sure we real about this. See, we say we care, but everybody say we care until we put our money where our mouth is, right? And so show me in our system. If we was St. Louis or whatever they call that state, the show me state, show me.
Missouri.
Right? Show me, because at the end of the day, we can say what we care about. We can say what we will do. I would not allow just to put it on the city, but we have a Department of Justice, juvenile justice. It all can't just be the city. I think if you find some dollars, I can go and help you find some dollars on our side. And I'm sure with some law enforcement funds, Colonel Holmes got over there, some LT.
He's gonna be heard. We're gonna hear from him. Yeah.
Right? We got some dollars there. But let's not just throw it on one side. I'm not saying that's all you're doing, but I want to be real frank and honest about it. Is that if we're going to be really authentic about this work, let's be all the way authentic and say what's the issue with the system when we do take your dollars. And I'll tell you frankly, my board personally have been against taking intervention dollars from DJJ because not intervention, but prevention dollars from DJJ because having to put kids in our juvenile justice in the JJIS system. So I just need us to be very clear about it, understand what we're asking, but at the same time, understand the level of work that needs to be done so we can do this the right way and don't cheat our kids, right? So that's all.
Okay, so just for clarification, I think we're in 2 conversations here. I was talking about one thing, you're talking about another. So whatever, you and I, we'll get a chance to.
I just think there's a whole lot more to it than just one thing. I think what I'm asking is let's be real about the whole picture, right? Because we have our global perspective that we also got to keep in mind with the work we do every day. So look. Not for nothing, but when when my staff go out to a parent and say, hey, we want to enroll your child in this program, the first thing they're going to ask is who's funding the program? Our parents who work in the school system will ask that question. Well, who's funding the program? And where our information going? And they have all the right in the world to ask that, right? So I know we there's a few things in this conversation that we're having. I just want you're coming in, so I want to make sure you have it all on your plate. So when we sit down and talk face to face, you'll know what I'm already coming with.
All right. Well, Ms. Obel, let me give Mr. Starling time to think about that. Let me hear from Colonel Holmes. He's had his hand up because I know there's some PAL money somewhere that we can get.
Yes, Mr. Obel, I was wondering, have you had a chance to sit with the district command there in Deerfield Beach as of yet?
Yeah, we had a whole community meeting and he was there at the table.
Okay, but I mean a one-on-one. Because
I gave him my number.
Okay.
I held him in the corner talking to him for a length of time, saying, hey, give me a call, because I hate to have to call downtown. And I still have not received a call.
Okay, I want to help facilitate a one-on-one meeting, and I can attend too. But I think it's very, very important for the command to understand where you're coming from, because as you stated earlier, we have different ways of providing different types of funding to programs such as yours. i.e. LETF fund that we have available, that a lot of our districts are trying to figure out how to utilize these funds. And you have a program in place that would be perfect. It sounds like to me. So I think it's very, very important to have a one-on-one. Now, I think sometimes things get convoluted when you're in a big a group or a big stage, and I think that sometimes we have commanders that kind of overlook some things. So I want to help facilitate that, and let's do that soon, okay?
Yes, so thank you, Colonel Holmes.
So let me recap something. So if DJJ gets involved and it's preventative, no matter that these
If they
kids
give you
haven't done
money,
anything,
if they give
if
you
they
money.
give you money, then that child's name is entered into the JJIS system. Is that what
Yeah.
I'm hearing? Because law enforcement now is privy to that system.
Absolutely.
And I don't want them getting our children's information, and the child hasn't done anything except I needed something to do so I don't get in trouble. Okay. But then they're going to be earmarked. You know, that school to prison pipeline that we've been talking about and trying to avoid. I have some real concerns about that. And I did hear Mr. Obell engage Chief Evans on that same subject a couple years ago at one of these meetings. So is there a way around that if DJJ provides some funding, sort of like for respite, because they don't have a place. That's what Ms. Evans was trying to find, a place for respite for these children that are beating up their parents at the house, you know, and getting arrested. But they are entered into a system. And you know, and I wouldn't take money from people if I knew they were going to enroll me and put me in a FC, you know, what's that, NCIS, put my prints in NCIS just because I'm trying to stay out of trouble, because that earmarks me.
Madam
Madam
Chair,
Chair.
Madam.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah, a number of organizations, and I just spoke to, I was talking to Bobby DeBose, who they have a really great Kappa Ligas program. They also have a junior Kappa Ligas program that they certainly they do a great job of raising funds, but they've had to decline DJJ's money specifically for this same reason. Because if you have to tell people, if I can't afford to send my child to a basketball program that's in my neighborhood, but I can go to Boys and Girls Club, and Boys and Girls Club take that money, they have to provide those children's information. I would like to know if my child is, if y'all are creating a face sheet for my child who I'm just trying to keep him off the street and have him at this organization. And I'm not saying that they're taking it, I'm using it as an example. Whoever gets it, it's a policy, as was explained to us by Chief Evans many times, because I didn't realize it at first, and actually found out from one of the other providers who were very upset. But so you've got to tell these parents that you are creating a face sheet for these children who've never been into trouble. And I ask you, the youth board, to remember that the chair of the Douglas Commission, who is the sheriff of Pinellas County, said that he wants all this type of information in JJIS so his deputies can look at it and determine whether they're going to make an arrest based on what they say. So they're not going to know, a deputy, or no offense, Colonel. You know, John James may know what Kappa Legals are. You know, Michael Bell may know what what the lamplighters are. But I would venture to say that a lot of officers who may not know and who may decide that that child has already been into trouble because they're looking at what is essentially equates to a face sheet and see how many times they've been into trouble. That, coupled with any promise data that's entered in as well, can have a devastating effect on the family. So that is certainly a problem, and we understand that it's you didn't create it, Mr. Starling. However, you're here, and that's kind of where we are as far as that. But people need to know that prior to entering their children into these programs where the funding comes, and if their children are going to appear in JJIS. And it is certainly unfortunate that is a policy that's being carried out, and you don't have any other option. Don't take the money. find it someplace else or don't provide the service or don't roll with DJJ. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Before we move on, this is a discussion. Mr. Obell, I hope you will take Colonel Holmes up on his offer. I don't think that the sheriff's office has a policy where they enter the child. So that may be a route, and just leave DJJ out of it. If that their money, their policy, I understand that, but it's also taxpayer money. And you have parents that are paying taxes, living legitimately. Their children aren't doing anything except they need something to do, okay, before they wind up in front of Judge Robollo, because boredom is sort of like the springboard to get a case number sometimes. So so if DJJ rolls like that, we're gonna have to find alternatives. And that's sad, because many law enforcement agencies do not have the proper motives when they see children of a darker hue in a system. So Ms. Mashala, before we move on, I wanted to segue from what Mr. James said about the NTAs. You know, they are recorded, but you put them automatically in diversion. I mean, tell me, or explain to our listeners how that's done. Because he said he found no record of a probable cause affidavit, but they got an NTA at the Jack. So can you walk us through that process, why he would not find a probable cause affidavit? They should have one if you.
Yes, that I don't.
Yeah.
I thought maybe Mr. James was not seeing probable cause affidavits on cases that would have come through directly to my office as a not in custody, because you wouldn't necessarily have, you would not have access to our not in custodies because they're purposely not put into the system unless we actually file formal charges. That's not what you think you saw, Mr. James?
No, ma'am. I'm going to tell you the trick that I use, and I'm just going to give it to you.
No, that's fine.
This is being
No, don't
recorded,
do
John
it.
James.
Keep that secret. But just say you found a workaround, and so you were able to get certain information. But don't give away your secrets, because they'll.
Well, I won't give away that, but we pulled out information from DJJ. So if a kid was, if they went to the intake facility, their name went, they created a face sheet for that child. That shows when that child went into the facility, when they were released from that facility.
Yeah.
Right. So I won't tell you the other way we do it, but from there, we were not able to find any information regarding that child's related to that child's arrest. Nothing.
So I'm going to have to look into that, because you know, Judge Holmes is correct. If an NTA is generated, there has to be an arrest a report to follow that. Again, separate and apart from not in custodies, which technically you shouldn't be able to access. And I don't have a problem. It's not a secret if a not in custody comes to us. The not in custody actually protects the youth if we don't, or even an adult, if we don't actually file charges, because they're not entered into the system unless we do. So you know, to the extent that we get domestic violence not in custody cases, nobody would see that in court if I've directly diverted them, which, you know, we do a majority of. The fact that they're coming through the Jack on an NTA and then you're not able to see a police report, I'm going to get with Mr. Alsbury at the Jack and try to figure out. And you know what would help, Mr. James, if actually you and I just communicate, you give me those cases, if you want to identify those specific cases for me, because then I could track them with you. And I'm happy to do that.
Not a problem. I'll send you over that information. In fact, I'll have, I hate to say it, like I have my assistant. No, I'll do it. I won't have her do it. I'll scan over the face sheets and send that to you directly, so you can see the ones that that we've identified, and you can see what information you have. But honestly, my thought is that Mr. Alsbury got wind of the cases, and from his office, from his
he would
desk,
directly divert it.
Correct.
Yes,
that's what my thought was.
And that's my thought too. And I, you know, let's just solve the puzzle. I can help you do that. So happy to do that.
We're solving problems. All right. Is there any further discussion? Colonel Holmes, I would love to sit in on some of these you know, preemptory, for lack of a better term, meetings to get our children engaged and not enrolled in the JJIS system, but because the sheriff's office does get that law enforcement fund money and does allow for grants to these businesses, you know, what I'm trying to do, and as I said, when you all elected me your chair, is my job is to make sure that children that don't need to go on that ride to the jail, that they don't get the silver bracelets, they don't get the chauffeured ride to the jail. That's one thing that concerns me, because that's traumatic. All the studies are now coming in saying that you handcuff a child, they may not articulate the trauma, but it shows up later on. If we can do something and we can advise the secretary by sending up our reports that, you know, this is the way to do it. But the problem is with the department itself. And as I said, their money, well, my tax dollars, their money, but I am not a proponent of putting a child in a computer that law enforcement has access to it just because they're participating in a program to keep them out of trouble. It makes no sense. But as I said, your money, so your policy. However, if we can get around that as a board and make suggestions, even to the sheriff, he's got money. He's not putting our children's names and addresses in these computers. So we're here to try to come up with solutions. And I think this board has been doing pretty good. So let's see what we can do. Mr. Walters.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Two things. The latest part of this conversation with the information that's being provided to law enforcement now, we addressed that more than 10 years ago. I argue this point why we was putting them in there 10 years ago when they were trying to get it in. And I was told at that time, and every time I mention it since, that, oh yeah, it's there, but nobody have access to it but a couple of people. Now, this goes back to when perhaps the secretary, Ms. Phillips, and Mr. Obel is the only one can remember this, because I've been fighting this for years because I knew where it was going. Everybody wants the information on our children. Why? Because it's money making. They make money from having that information in the system so that they can, as they talk about the sheriff up there somewhere, that uses this to direct his deputies. And the other thing is, Madam Chair, before the meeting started, you talked about the lady that you gave the big dress to, because you didn't think that she was appropriately addressed to go before the judge, but you changed her dress, and she still screwed up when she went before the judge. And that happens when we have programs that changes everything except mindset. We have to change the mindset. Our prevention portion of this should be dealing with making a change, having a person to forget who they used to be and get to being someone anew. And this can be done, but most programs deal with intervention. Again, that's where the money at. And I just would like to see us, if we're going to make recommendations to the state or wherever, let's deal with the prevention side and talk about how necessary it is to have a mindset change and not a big dress change. Thank you.
Spoken like a true preacher. All right. Any further comments on that before we move to missed opportunities?
Madam Chair, I have one quick thing to say with what Roosevelt Walters was talking about in this imprint that I think sometimes we definitely need to remember. If we're talking about 10 years ago, that imprint goes with that child for the rest of their lives, and they can never get that imprint out to even start over again, even if they wanted to. So for as much, we need to look at this
on what it really stands on, because once that footprint is there, there is no way to remove it. And that's not giving that child another chance.
But Mrs. Starling, real quick, do the parents in Palm Beach County know that, you know, the children riding on the van going to the program, that their information is being entered into a computer, the juvenile justice input system or whatever it's called, that law enforcement has access to? Are they given that waiver or disclaimer or something like that?
As it relates to, there are two different systems, so it's not the same system as far as the access points. So we have what we call the prevention well. And I won't belabor it, but everyone does not have access, just like my probation officers cannot even see the prevention well. So we have kids on the prevention well with the qualifying civil citation cases, which are actually face sheets. The kids who are in our programs, prevention, there is no face sheet. They're in for the purpose of, we're collecting the data, because obviously, you know, there's invoices and their data. So one thing that do occur is that, because if I have a kid who's in a prevention program, and if he or she has a substance abuse issue, or there are things that we are putting in place, so we're able to collect data to develop additional resources, but there's not a face sheet that's established for those kids on the prevention web who are participating in our prevention programs. Like here, I have my Urban League. So my kids that are in Urban League, they're doing the different programming, they're in on the prevention side. So anyone who looks at it, I can see it, my staff can't see it. So it is correct.
Can law enforcement see it?
Yes.
I believe they can, but by amendment of statute.
But it's
I'll
not
have to pull it.
Yeah, but it's not a face sheet. So there is no face sheet.
Doesn't matter as long as they know my name,
When I
my
say face
address.
sheet, I mean there is a record that when 10 years ago, law enforcement did not have access to JJIS. There was just a few people. It was police led, the guys who with the handcuffs led that to make sure that they had access to JJIS. And as the sheriffs will tell you, not ours, I'm happy to say, but the other sheriffs will tell you, they use that as a criteria to determine whether or not they're going to arrest a kid. They're not going to know all the what was basketball and what was something else. They're going to see a program that they don't know. So when I say face sheet, obviously I know what face sheet is, but I'm saying the data is there and that's what they're reviewing. Now there is video of the whole Douglas Commission, which led to this information going in along with promise, not even crimes, but just information that's there, led by police. And this is why. And this is not me speaking as my opinion. This is how it got there. And there is data from the commission led by police. That's what they want. And I know what it looks like in our system. So you have a kid who is doing these different programs. I would hope that the answer would be, particularly in Broward specifically, that they would let, if Mr. O'Bell and the Qs, the Zeta Chi Stars take this money, or if they would tell folk, this is what's going to happen. Your kid is going to go, name is going to go into JJIS. So it's technically not, but it's all this information that has nothing to do with a crime that's in there, that's building on these children who have never been in trouble in their lives. And so I say we have to really be honest of what we're talking about when we say with all this information that's in there. And they're using this for the point of determining what their next move with. The guys with the handcuffs are using this to determine what their next move is with children. And the majority of those children look like me. Now, those are the facts. That's not speculation. There's data that backs all this up.
Well, I certainly understand your concern.
All right. Well, Mr. Starling, welcome to the C17 board. You're our liaison to DJJ. So, I know you're going to have to report to them, but we got some concerns. Okay, let me get Judge Robolo. Then Mr. O'Bell, I'm coming to you. Judge Robolo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And President Ellison and Mr. Starling, I think you might not be connecting. Mr. Starling, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when you say it's not on their face sheet, what you're talking about is something that I see in my courtroom every day, which is a face sheet that says this is the kid's record with regards to how he's been involved in the system. That's what was that what you mean when you're talking about face sheet?
Yes, there is no face sheet for a kid in a prevention program.
Okay, so what you're saying is that these prevention programs, they go into JJIS, but they don't go into the face sheet.
Yeah, there's a different system. We have two sides of JJS. We have a system for the main system that most folks have access to. Then we have another prevention system in which there's limited access. So the point where the sheriff's department do have access to the prevention web, simply because they do have civil citation programs. So the sheriff's department, some can see it. So it really just depends on the jurisdiction. And so if you have those jurisdictions who want access and they've been granted access, that's why, yes, it is a concern. If they use the mere fact that a child's name is in the system and they arbitrarily believe that that kid is involved with DJJ, that's where you have a legitimate concern. That is a
Polk
concern.
County, Pinellas,
I understand.
Bay County. I can go down the litany.
Well, we know it could be Broward. It may not be BSO, but we got a lot of other police departments that are here
Yeah.
with new untrained officers who are looking at this and looking to make sure that they're gonna judge this kid based on what they see. And I would bet you that they're not gonna wait and determine what these different programs are. It's in JJIS. Clearly to other folk, that means that the kid's been in trouble, and that means that nothing good is going to come of that. These are the guys with the handcuffs. Otherwise, they wouldn't even need it in the first place. But that's the purpose of looking in there to see what's going on with the kid. And they are and will continue to make decisions based on what's in JJIS, both sides of it. And they'll start with JJIS. Those are the facts that comes from law enforcement. This isn't me. It comes from law enforcement.
Mr. Obel?
Yeah, to Madam President, NAACP point, yes, it is law enforcement that is assuring us that this happens, right? And some of them know these law enforcement more personal than others. So we have to, again, I'm ringing the hell out of this bell, right? And I'm sorry, no born again Christians on here, but I'm ringing the hell out of this bell.
Hell is in the Bible.
But because I need y'all to realize how serious this is, how devastating this can become. It don't take but one stop. It do not take but one stop. And then when Gloria has someone else that she back on here with John James fighting about, and we all in here having this conversation about, right? So me being married to a law enforcement officer, I know this thing exists. Ain't no lie about it. I see it every day. A simple prevention program turns into something more than what it should have been. We got to be real about this. And Mr. Starling, I'm sorry you came on the day of this. But brother, we love you, but we love you enough to tell you the truth. And that change shall be made with policies, because that pen and ink is still strong. So we encourage you with love to speak with your leaders about this policy and get the change that all our children deserve. Not me, not Marsha, not Miss Holmes, not Sheriff Holmes, but all our children. This is about the kids. This ain't about none of us. And if you're gonna come to Broward and leave, we're gonna have some real conversations. And this is one of them. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm done. I close.
Okay,
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Walters.
Yes, one more thing, and this one is directed at Mr. Starling. Again, we go back
Mr. Starling, we
years
do
ago.
love you. You know, you feel the love, but you know, you're here. You're in the chair.
We only beating up on you because you right now is DJJ. Even the chief probation officer can't even share this with you. But again, going way back, when they were saying that there was no record, if a person was put into one of the community programs, there was no record of it. And I argued the point that it was, and everybody on the board agreed with me except DJJ, who said, no, it doesn't exist. Then I asked the question, how do the police officer who stops Little Roosevelt on the corner know that Little Roosevelt is on his third time therefore is not qualified at that time for a silver citation because he's already had 2 bites of the apple. And they finally had to admit, yes, we do keep records, but only a couple of people have it. Now, and this thing here is going to go the same way. You can be deny, and yes, you're right. But we want to get to yes, you're right a hell of a lot quicker. I know hell is in the Bible. A hell of a lot quicker than where we got to the rest of it. And I am really concerned. And Mr. Starling, this is not personal. These things with me are issues, and I deal with issues. Now, the next time we meet, we agreed upon something. I walk hand in hand with you. It's not personal with me. I just want to make sure that we are cutting out a path that our youth can recognize and follow those of us who care for them, so that when it come our time to be cared for, they won't mind. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, there is a suggestion of Children's Service Council of Broward have a salmon system that law enforcement do not have access to. It's a salmon system. You can call over the Children's Service of Broward County. We have some great resource over there. Check it out. Check it out. See how it works, right? That's an alternative. We prefer to have no system at all, to be quite frank with you. But if you're going to use one that law enforcement do not have access to. And the salmon system is one that we utilize that law enforcement do not have access to.
Well, you know, we are a data-driven society, and so therefore certain collections have to be made in order to justify funds being spent. I agree and understand with that. But if it's a child that has no prior record, but their parent says, you know what, they're bored and I don't want my child to get in trouble. I don't want them to be online looking at porn and stuff. Is there something that we can send them to, something that they can do? And we send them to, I think the Boys and Girls Club does receive some DJJ money.
I know they did at one time, yes.
They did at one time. I was on the board of that Hacky Reichman's years ago, but I wasn't with the money side. I was just with the mentoring. But it's just sad to say, look, we're not going to send a kid to a program. We're not going to recommend, because that program gets money from DJJ, and the child's name, address, and identifying information goes into a computer. And even though it's on one side of your network, if law enforcement and the legislature gave them the authority to access that information, and they decide, we don't want this self-fulfilling prophecy to be on a child that otherwise has has done nothing except being bored at home, and their parent wants them to get involved and do something. We've got to find a way, if it is just straight prevention and the child has done nothing else except the parents want them out and socializing, get out of the house. The pandemic is subsiding and everything. But, I think the parents should know from any program that a child is involved in that law enforcement can get their information.
It should be a policy, a mandate from the program as a requirement, just like DJJ is requiring them to provide all of the information for the children. There should be a requirement to inform the parents that this is going to happen because they take these funds, that they're going to be entered into JJIS. I mean, because I'm sure people would think twice if they knew that this was so. And remember, in Broward, they're also getting disciplinary issues, which are not crimes in many cases. If you do anything, if you run in a hallway and they say whatever that is, they want all disciplinary records, promise and otherwise. You're growing the infractions when two of them could not be, they're not, criminal. So you got those pieces in there. And then, so you have a little record going on of children. And this is going back, for years. So you were in the 4th grade and something happened, you got in trouble at school, not a crime. And then you have that in there. And the entries show that it was entered by the school district's police department. And then you have, the other entries from the Boys and Girls Club and, and so on and so forth. You have this long, all these entries, numerous. And then we have, cops retiring all the time. And this, I don't know that they would all get trained. I would hope that they would on how to read this. We have a problem. And our children, Black and brown children, never get the benefit of the doubt when it happens to us. Check the stats that we never get the benefit of the doubt. So when somebody's looking in JJS, they see these things, they don't know what they are. And then next thing you know, the cops have one answer for the most part, and that is handcuffs. So this is how we get there. We went from them not having access to having access to, putting more and more data in, and it has led now to a very dangerous place for Black and brown children.
And I don't know how many parents know this information, but this may be a town hall subject matter for a different organization. And we invite some guests to come in and discuss it. But we do have to move on. Mr. Starling, I see you're taking notes. So that this is something that, will come back up again. But I want to give Colonel Holmes and Mr. Obel an opportunity to meet and see what BSO can do. They don't have a computer garnering this information, so let's get it done if we can. And Mr. Obel, if you'll email me as you've done in the past for your Friday things, some Friday that I'm not teaching or busy, I'll show up.
And Madam Chair, BSO is not the only one that has those dollars.
Yes, Coconut Creek, all
City
law enforcement has
all of them have
discretionary
something.
funds.
They don't have the big bucks like SO, but they have some. They can't buy a helicopter, but they can go ahead and do some other things. Because
well, you know why I kept harping on
helicopters are
BSO.
important. Okay.
They
So
are.
you want to, so they not be able to do that, but they got some money.
Because I see Colonel Holmes here. If Major London was here, I'd be bothering him too. So that's why I kept harping on BSO. But I'd like to move up to the civil citation. Is Ms. Gaynor here?
Yeah, I think she's on the other side. Let me see.
Okay. Now I will disclose to you a little bit before this meeting began, I got an email from Ms. Gaynor. She didn't receive any information, but I think that's because of Chief Evanson's resignation, and so things were kind of stalled.
Madam Chair, is this Sarah Cunningham who has her hand raised supposed to be filling in for that information or no?
I'm not seeing that. I think Madam Secretary gets that information.
Okay.
Okay.
The only people I see are the board members on my screen.
Okay. They're not a panelist, they're attendees. That's why I was asking.
Ms. Cummings, good afternoon. Can you turn your
camera
on?
No, is this about let's make sure what this is about first.
Yeah.
Is this, you have
Raise
the
your
data?
hand up?
So this is not Miss Cummings, but we're utilizing
It's Ms.
her
Gaynor.
because we don't have a link. Yes.
Well, you don't need a link. You just need a number, and I'll email that to you with the passcode. You just put that in, and then the secretary of the board pulls you over on the panelist side.
She can speak now. She can turn it on now.
Okay,
I moved her over. That Sarah got moved over.
Okay, I see Miss Gaynor, also known as Sarah Cummings. You're in the computer now for using an alias. Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm sure Sarah will not appreciate that. So I changed my name. I'm ready for the report.
Yes, ma'am.
For civil citation, there were 56 youth referred to civil citation this month. About 39% of them were female, 61% male. Again, the majority of the youth are Black youth, 61%. And there were 20 youth who completed the program successfully this month. The top charge is still battery and followed by petty theft. Do you all have any questions for me?
Madam Chair.
Yes, you may.
I rejoined After much resistance, I rejoined the district school, district matrix committee and code of conduct. And
Congratulations. Thank you.
And actually thought about calling John James from the call. It was so disturbing. The state has now changed the definition of simple battery. And to the point where if it looks, I know that law enforcement said any unwanted touching, is actually battery, but I would expect with this new definition, that we will see more children being arrested from our district for simple battery, because the change is not an option for the district. It has to be done, but the description of what is was it intentional, was it not, did the person, were they expecting it, all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's clear enough to determine in many cases, because I've been on it long enough, but know where school leaders often don't know what the matrix says, and they'll see any unwanted touching, simple battery, the police get involved, there's an arrest, and there isn't there's nothing good that's going to come of it. It's going to go to it's in committee now. It's going to go to recommendation soon, and we can expect the numbers to go up. I will send out the description as it was explained to the committee, as to what that's going to look like. And I suggested that perhaps there may be a conversation both with the state attorney's office and with the public defender's office, so we can avoid some of those arrests. But it is gotten really ugly as far as, again, this is state statute, all in the name of safety. Now, we're not talking about somebody being hurt, obviously that's a different thing, but we are in we can expect some really different and not good things happening as it goes forth. Those battery charges will go up simply because it's now giving a license to do just that, based on the simple juvenile behavior of a child. And I will send it out so you all know exactly what I'm talking about. I said, well, have you all spoken with to give a clear an example? So when the school leaders are looking at it on how this punishment goes, and they're like, so much of it will have to, they're trying to avoid reporting the child behavior as simple that has to go to the DOE. Seems to me they're more concerned about the reporting than what's going to happen when the school resource officers called and they said, well, this child has committed simple battery. Now we know, so there are some schools that are all in right now. I think this will just give them a license to go forward with that. But it is, the statute change is not good. Assessor change, not good, leaves us more, it's easier and almost, it's almost like it's a literal thing for the unwanted touching, where children will be charged. And the district says, well, we don't arrest people. We heard that 10, 12 years ago. We don't arrest people, the cops arrest people. So this is, I will send it out.
And I'll give you, as soon as I get it, I'll give you agenda space at our next meeting in April to elaborate. But Judge Wibola, have you heard anything? I try to follow the legislature, but sometimes I just lose my mind trying to follow every bill that they pass. Are you aware of any amendments to Florida Statute 784? That's the battery statute.
I'm not, Judge. I have not heard of any bills to try to amend the battery statute.
Okay.
The assessor went with the real order, just if we would say any unwanted touching, but that was that's the statute. Any
touching, any unconsented touching.
Different ones, there were two different, what battery was in the district was not, and we had it broken down in different levels of what that really means, where now they have the state has removed that. And so I will send you what we're talking about.
Okay.
Because we're headed that way.
Well, Mr. James and Miss Michelle are going to be real busy.
Yeah, I would love to see that, because the way that we've understood battery always has always been the actual intentional touching. So it looks at the actor. What you were saying now is it looks at the victim, and the victim determines whether or not a battery occurs, not the actor. So what my intentions are no longer in consideration. We had a couple cases being tried in juvenile courts in the last few weeks here where that was the argument, that it wasn't intentional, and we were kind of successful in those cases. If what you're saying is true and that's actually going to go through, that is monumental. When I tell you how bad that is,
it's all going to be in the interpretation of the school leader. They're trying to write the description now, but it's safety. So it's nothing good is going to come of it. Certainly we were the parents and the stakeholders who were on the committee or in the minority, we were outvoted, but we wanted on the record as to what is what. And I asked if is your general counsel weighing? I know there's a way to say anything, but the way that it is written, we're in big trouble. Our children are in big trouble. But I will actually get that for you.
Yeah, Ms. Michelle, normally the state gets info. You got any intel on a possible revision of Florida Statute 784?
I do not, Judge. I would like to review
District's interpretation, because I know they used to work your predecessor, Maria, and to figure out what you all would prosecute and what you wouldn't, and then help write they're supposed to have an example as to what the school leader is looking at, the language to determine whether it's simple battery or not. But they need some help on that. They need some legal help to stay within Cessor and the DOE and in the statute. They all need to align, so it's not about arresting more kids than what we need to.
All right. Well, we'll keep our eyes open. I'll certainly that's my new project for tonight to try to track that and see what's going on. All right, Ms. Gaynor, you gave us everything. Were there missed opportunities? Can you tell, or should I throw that to Mr. Stallings?
So we don't have any additional missed opportunity data from last month.
Okay, Mr. Stallings, can you pull up missed opportunity? This is where the police could have and should have issued a civil citation, but failed to do so. We break that down. We break it up by municipality, where they are. We have some repeat offenders, some recidivists, cities that don't believe in civil citation, but it's the law. Okay, and so we want to keep track of that. So
yeah, absolutely. We would like an opportunity. We have some high level data that includes civil citation. It will include and break down each municipality as far as the percentage who are using civil citation the most versus those the least. And so as a board, we can come out of it with a work committee to look at those issues. So we have the data. We would like to be able to present it. I believe Chief Evans had previously, communicated to bring it in.
Mr. Stallings, let me just cut to the chase. I am because we only have 2 hours, and you see how our discussions go, and I try to get everybody involved.
Okay.
I hear this term high level data. It's real simple what I'm asking for.
Yes.
Okay. Miss Evans could just rattle it off. She was looking at it. She would send Miss Gaynor the information so we would know that. But to have somebody just share my screen and talk for they asked for 30 minutes. Unless I know what they're going to present, it ain't happening. Okay. If they want to submit something to me, show me, is it germane to my board? But the high level data, we're not asking for that at this point. At some point, I guess you'll send it out to us in a report, and then my board can read it, digest it, and ask intelligent questions, as opposed to, well, I just got this today, and things like that. So Miss Evans was very good about just pulling it up and say, well, there were 23 missed opportunities. 3 of them were from Coconut Creek, 5 of them were from Coral Springs, and I'm just throwing out the cities, and then I would look at and see if BSO had any, and Colonel Holmes would say, not this time, Judge, or if he had one, he had an explanation. I looked at Victor London, and he's the major in Fort Lauderdale, and he would say, we had none. Okay, that's the kind of stuff, for 5-minute reports that we can fit it in on for this board. So I know somebody's anxious to come in and talk to us for 30 minutes, but unless I know what they're going to say, I sent an email, I returned a call, I heard nothing else. So maybe you can call me or email me and kind of fill me in on what kind of presentation they're going to make. And then they said, well, we want to present to your board every month. You see, I got 11 minutes now before we adjourn. It ain't happening because we have too much to talk about, and I try to keep us on track. So, Mr. Starling, if you can't give me that today, if you'll be prepared next month to give that, or turn it over to Ms. Gaynor, or y'all work together. Ms. Gaynor, Mr. Starling's going to be here as the interim. So if you can kind of work with him and tell him what the fast action, the rapid response that this board needs, then we can work at it. And then if you'll call me, Mr. Starling, and you tell me exactly what this high level data that y'all like to refer to, but nobody tells me what it is, then if I think it's something that we can fit in, or I can make some time, but nobody wants to talk to me about it, just want to throw up a screen and talk to my board. So,
Okay,
I just don't, we don't have the time for that. We don't.
all right, not a problem. We will
Okay.
be talking. All right.
All right. And I will answer. Trust me, I will answer.
Certainly.
All right. So I'll table the missed opportunity report for next month till I can get that information. And Ms. Gaynor, if you'll call Mr. Starling, I'm sure he'll be able to work with you. I would like to know how many children we have in the Broward Detention Center.
We currently have 54 that's
Okay.
currently in secure detention.
Okay.
We have 42 that are currently on electronic monitoring throughout our communities.
Okay.
And then we have 17 that's on home detention. And we have 5 that's currently on intensive home detention.
What is that?
Intensive home detention, just without the device on their leg. So therefore, they're being checked on a lot more frequently during the week, during the initial part of their home detention or house arrest status, as far as terminology. So it's basically house arrest. But there's 74 kids who have, pending court action that we have in our community that's restricted with this higher degree of accountability as far as supervision, meaning that they're subject to violations if they're not compliant, and up it will result in an arrest and back in JDC process-wise.
And Mr. Starling, before I open it up for questions, if any, from the board. Can you tell me that I heard about something called a statewide graduated response matrix? I don't really know what it is. That's why I didn't put it on. Mr. Weeks was going to talk about it with this board, but he's out because of the passing of his dad. But do you know anything about that? That the state, I just need to know so I can put you down for a report on it for our next meeting.
Yeah,
It looks like, to me, and I'll tell you, I saw a little glimpse of it, but it looks like, when for the adults, the dangerous offender, where the court has to make specific findings as to why they're not going to put this person out on bond, or it's going to keep that person in jail for an extended period of time because they are like a dangerous reoffender. And it kind of looks like that kind of matrix for the children. So am I correct, or I'm thinking of my felony days?
Yeah, well, the short version is that if a youth is on probation, it gives the probation officer the autonomy to not violate a kid instantly for the first, non-compliance. It gives the opportunity to work on correcting the violating behavior through a measurement of accountability without the implications of court activity. The judges have to give us that authority to do so, but at the same token, it's more about accountability more than anything, but not having those other unintended consequences as far as kids, running rampant, being in violation, and we don't violate or we don't take progressive action, again, to work toward correcting any violent behavior. As an example, if a kid is out of school, it's our job to facilitate ensuring that kid is enrolled in school. What are the barriers? The probation officer have more of an assertive responsibility to help facilitate the enrollment or the level of compliance or what, and again, negotiating or navigating the barriers that may affect their ability to thrive as juvenile offenders or juveniles on probation.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, I am listening.
John James is making faces over there. John James, are you having?
I-
I didn't see his hand up, you know,
I'm-
so
I'm
I just thought he
sorry.
was looking. That's the way
I'm
James
sorry.
looks
He
at
was
me.
baffled about something that was going on.
Madam Secretary, forgive me, you did see my face. My face, it did what it did, because anytime I think that you're infringing on a person's due process rights, it bothers me a little bit. And I think what this statewide matrix is, what they're looking to do is they're looking to take away the authority from the judge and place it in the hands of the Department of Juvenile Justice and their probation officers to determine whether or not they are going to make or add on more conditions to a child's probation without going through the judicial process. There's a reason why you will file an affidavit saying that that child violated their probation and send it to a courtroom to give that court an opportunity to be able to determine whether or not a violation actually occurred. The law says that that violation has to be willful, right? What you do when you tell a probation officer that here are 7 things that you should look at, and if the child is not doing these things within a particular time, then you could add other conditions to their probation. Well, that's not what I think the Department of Juvenile Justice has the privy to do. That's only a responsibility of the court, because there are other things that are taken into consideration where the judge can decide whether or not that act was not willful. I completely disagree with this statewide graduated response matrix. I think that all it's doing is trying to give the Department of Juvenile Justice way more power. You're a part of the executive branch, if I'm not mistaken. There's 3, you don't get a chance to infringe upon that. That's something that should be left to the court. The court should decide whether or not that child needs more conditions of probation, not the Department of Juvenile Justice. And I completely disagree with this. And I hope that our judges in the 17th Judicial Circuit do not follow this statewide graduated response matrix and don't sign, because in order for them to even have the authority to do so, the judge would need to sign off on that at the time of disposition. I hope that our judges are reading their dispositions and understanding that we're not agreeing to this and not allowing for DJJ to have their way.
Well, when I was in adult court, the case law was very, very clear. No conditions can be modified or added or amended in any way without judicial action. And that probationer had to be brought before the court. But I understand juveniles are a little different, so I'm gonna have to look at the rules. That's my second project for this evening. 784, and then the probation rules for juveniles. But that does seem to be a bit extreme. Judge Rabolo can't speak on it because it's pending or impending or may appear before him.
Right.
But I'm not held by that canon anymore. So as I said, if I see some issues, yes, Judge Rabolo, you want to take a shot at it? We got 13 minutes.
I do, Judge, and I'll be brief, and Madam Chair. The way that you just specified, the way that the law is in adult court, that's exactly the way it is in juvenile court. There's plenty of things in juvenile court that are the same as adult court, and then obviously there's a bunch that aren't, but that is the same. You cannot deviate from when a judge imposes disposition, it's a judge imposing sentencing, and it's what the judge says it goes, not what the Department of Juvenile Justice or any probation officer wants to do. And that's just the law, period.
Well, maybe there's a bill that's going to change the law. I got to look that up. All right. Mr. Obel? Yeah.
Madam Chair, just when I thought it just can't get any worse.
In the last days, said the no, okay.
I mean, I think we need to go back to a statement you made earlier, Madam Chair. I think it's time that we have a community meeting with partners and policymakers and DJJ and really talk about these policies that we all are kind of be held accountable to in some cases. I think there's a lot of misinformation. There's information that's not being shared. And I think it's not, we got to be real and just hold people's feet to the fire. And so I think we need to have a community meeting. I'm more than happy to help organize it. But we need to figure out what's going on with DJJ and this whole totality as we continue to put it forward. Now, Mr. Starling, again, whether it was you today or Cassandra Evans, this would be the same conversation, I assure you. my right hand to the good Lord, this conversation would not have changed, regardless who sits in that seat today. But I also assure you this, that we're gonna fight like hell for our kids. And so I just invite you to come to Broward when you leave the cozy county of Palm Beach. Come to Broward so we can have a real community conversation and we can talk about some of these policies of what all needs to be changed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll table this discussion because it's going to take more time. I've got 11 minutes to get y'all out of here, and Mr. Walters is my timekeeper. So we will discuss that in detail. So Mr. Starling, be ready. And I'm certainly going to do some research on that. And Mr. James, you might want to be ready on behalf of the Office of the Public Defender. And we have a public question. How do we fight this law? So I gotta check it, and make sure that it's on base. But Colonel Holmes, how
Yes.
many of our children do you have in the Broward County Jail?
All right, we currently have 9 that are incarcerated. We have 8 at the Paul Ryan facility. We have 1 at the North Broward facility. We have 9 males, 0 females. We have 0 that have tested positive for COVID, and all of the juveniles are receiving medical and educational services.
Okay. Any questions of Colonel Holmes of the number and what's going on in the jail?
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Do you track the numbers that are over the age of 18 that's currently involved with juvenile justice that's sitting in jail?
These are juveniles.
Okay, because there's some juveniles.
We deal strictly with juveniles.
Okay.
Are you thinking of juveniles that have been charged as adults?
No, we have juveniles who, for an example, I can have a juvenile who's on probation, who's 18, but they're in jail, but they're still under the jurisdiction of, the juvenile court system because they still have pending juvenile matters that have not been closed out.
Those are not the same numbers. These are juveniles that have been charged as adults.
Okay.
Filed. These are the ones that we're looking at here, not the ones that are kind of operating in both systems at the same time because they turn 18.
All right, thank you.
Because we want to make sure they're getting the educational opportunities and as well as medical care while they're in custody. Because, the statute changed to allow for longer pretrial detention of juveniles. So we're trying to address that and make sure that they're getting help. Major London can't tell me how many are in the Fort Lauderdale jail, but he always thinks that it's none. Also, it's my fault because I traveled and Black History Month. I'm always busy, Black History Month, the same for Women's History Month. But I do have a number. Cassandra was very, very good in getting an email to me with Major Roselli's number. And I'm going to call him and get 3 dates that it's convenient to him, and then I'll post those dates to all board members. And majority rules, whoever's available to go, we want to tour the juvenile detention center. Okay, so we're trying to get a new one, but we want to see the dilapidated, the bad old one before we get a new one. So as soon as I get those dates, I'll submit them to the secretary. She'll send out an email to all board members and pick the date. Give me a 1, 2, 3. Okay, if Wednesday's at 10 or Wednesday at 4, whatever Major Roselli says. And then Colonel Holmes, I think you can help me out on that. If we can't get a consensus, we may have to do 2 tour duties. So, but we're trying to do it all in one so that we're all together and see together. Okay, thank you. All right. I can't get a legislative update from Mr. Weeks because he normally horns in on the juvenile issues. But because we had the legislators on earlier, we'll skip that. Any updates from DJJ other than y'all want to speak to my board and Mr. Stallings, you and I would talk to find what this high level data is all about. I keep hearing it, and I asked what it was. They said high level data. I said, could you break that down for me? High level data. So when I get some understanding, I'll open the mic for you.
Not a problem, be easy peasy. So even though we use the term high level, but it's not, it's data. It literally, we'll talk.
Yeah, okay.
It's gonna be helpful. It's
I love
definitely
to
helpful.
talk to you, Mr. Starling. I may even buy you lunch. You know, my gracious. All right, is there anything for the good of the order? We have 6 minutes. Anything for the good of the order?
Okay, can I add one additional thing?
Yeah, I'm
Now,
listening.
since we talk about the retained kids, but one thing I did meet with all of the supervisors in Broward yesterday. So one thing that came up, I gave you the number of kids in detention. So in probation, we have more than 582 kids in our communities. And one of the things that we do know that the average length of stay for probationers in this county is quite lengthy. And so as far as looking at, because again, if you're on probation, there's a higher probability of a violation, illy or whatever. So we definitely need to look at that. I think for those,
Because the judges keep extending it. Revoke already and get the child off probation and all these followed bys, I did the detention followed by y'all stop it. But that's just my philosophy. I didn't have a lot of followed by sentences, and my probationers didn't violate that often, but I only did adult. The only time I covered in juvenile was when a judge was out. So
yeah,
Judge Robolo is the resident expert on juvenile because he's been there 10 years. So that's not my calling, but I will become an expert on it.
Madam Chair, I need to correct you. Judge Elijah Williams, as you well know, has been in dependency a lot longer.
But he's not on this board. You are. So you're the resident expert.
I'm here at his behest.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
The Colonel, did you have something? I thought you started to speak.
Oh, Colonel Holmes, I'm sorry. Did you have your hand up? Okay. I'll get to him next time. I promise. I'll bother him because I want to find out what he and Mr. Obel can come up with. We need quick solutions.
He has something. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You got a couple of minutes.
You have 4 minutes.
Yes, Judge Holmes, if you want to attend that meeting that we're going to have with the Deerfield Beach Command, we'll reach out and let you know the date and time.
Because I'm from Deerfield, so I
Right,
have a vested interest.
I know. So,
Okay.
yeah, we'll make sure you're included, okay?
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. Anything else? Mr. Obel, you will make that motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
All right, requires no second. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your time, Mr. Starling. I look forward to meeting with you and talking with you and welcome again. I appreciate you.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Judge, before you end, I just want to let Madam Secretary know that I was here on time. Unfortunately, I was being kicked off. I just want you to make sure you put that in your minutes that John James was on time. Thank you, Madam.
I don't know if that was
the record is closed. We adjourned, so the record will not reflect anything that you had to say. You talk to the court reporter while I went to the bathroom. Bye.